Exactly 6 p.m. here in Cairo. Very good day, dear viewers. It's time for the 6 p.m. Channel 2 news. And we start off with the headlines. I'll be right back with the headlines. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi receives Djibouti's foreign minister and the chief of the Russian giant Rosatom. Condemnations continue over Netanyahu's election pledge to annex a part of the West Bank. And Sudan's leaders reach a new plan for peace talks with rebel groups. Welcome back. President Fattah el-Sisi today received Djibouti's Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation, Mahmoud Ali Youssef. Presidential spokesperson Ambassador Bassem Radi said the president hailed brotherly historic relations binding both Djibouti and Egypt, which has been translated into consensus in position over many Arab, African and international issues. The president also stressed willingness to continue enhancing relations in order that they reach a level of strategic partnership, saying Egypt's eyes the African Horn country as a major regional partner, given its role in ensuring economic development, stability, security in the Red Sea. The Djibouti minister handed President Fattah el-Sisi a message from President Ismail Omar Gilla, that appreciated Egypt's presidency of the Egyptian Union and its role in achieving sustainable development and pushing efforts to maintain Africa's stability and security. President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi also held a meeting with General Manager of the Russian giant Rosatom that was attended by Minister of Electricity Mohammed Shakir and the head of the Authority of Nuclear Stations for the Generation of Electricity. Presidential spokesperson Bassem Radi said the meeting is part of the undergoing efforts with the Russian side to establish the nuclear station of Daba for generating electricity in Egypt. He added that the president stressed Egypt is looking forward to continuous cooperation with Russia to establish the station with the highest world standards in both technical aspects and in safety and security, so that it stands as a new symbol for historic friendship between both countries. The Russian guest expressed appreciation for ongoing cooperation with Egypt in the establishment of Al-Daba station, saying that the cooperation is committed to exert its utmost in implementation with the project and completing all preparations for its implementation. Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli today said we have a historic opportunity to develop Cairo, given the strong political will for completing project aimed at revamping the capital. The remark was made as Madbouli inspected undergoing projects to remove leather preparation workshops and factories at the Ayoun yesterday and Gateway in Old Eid Cairo that were earlier relocated to the city in Badr neighborhood. The Prime Minister also inspected similar removal of shanty buildings in Ain Hayat area near the Museum of Civilization in the city in Old Cairo, Fustat, as part of the underway developments aimed at transforming the city, which houses the historical Amr bin al-As Mosque, as well as several historical churches, into a world-class tourist destination. Later, Prime Minister Mustafa Madbouli opened the Center for Rehabilitating Peoples with Disabilities, erected by the Interior Ministry in the 10th of Ramadan city. Accompanied by Minister of Interior Mahmoud Tawfi and the Prime Minister, hailed efforts to establish the facility, which is considered one of the largest in Africa and the Arab region. The Center for Rehabilitating Peoples with Disabilities was established over 4 months on an area of 24,000 square meters and provides state-of-the-art services with an aim of incorporating them in the society.
شباب مصر هو أمل مصر، عشان أنتم الشباب اللي تقدروا بفضل الله سبحانه وتعالى تغيروا الواقع إلى واقع أفضل بالجهد والإصرار والصبر.
المؤتمر الوطني للشباب
المنارة سبتمبر 2019
تحت رعاية السيد الرئيس عبد الفتاح السيسي رئيس الجمهورية.
King Salman reiterated Saudi Arabia's condemnation of the Israeli Prime Minister's pre-election pledge to annex the Jordan Valley in the occupied West Bank in a phone call on Thursday with Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas. Battling to win re-election in September 17 polls, Netanyahu issued a deeply controversial pledge on Tuesday to annex the strategic Jordan Valley, with accounts for around a third of the occupied West Bank. Russia also condemned Netanyahu's announcement annexation plan as Netanyahu embarked on a visit to the Black Sea resort of Sochi to see Russian President Vladimir Putin. Jordan has called for a move by the international community against the plan, and its Foreign Minister Ayman Safdi said that the move would push the whole region towards violence. Welcome back, dear viewers. Meanwhile, UN spokesman said the Israeli annexation plan for parts of the West Bank would consist of a serious violation of international law. She added that such moves, if implemented, would be devastating to the potential of reviving negotiations and regional peace, while severely undermining the viability of the two-state solution. An EU statement echoed the UN objection, adding that the plan was a threat to the prospects for a lasting peace. An emergency meeting of the foreign ministers of the 57 member states of Organization of Islamic Cooperation, OIC, was convened also in Jeddah on Sunday to discuss the issue. Sudan and South Sudan leaders agreed today that war is no longer an option between them. The remarks were made during talks in Juba, which focused on border disputes and oil trade, but also resolving protracted conflicts in both nations. Sudan's new Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok met with South Sudanese President Salva Kiir on his first official visit since becoming premier in the newly formed Sudanese government. Sudan's Sovereign Council and armed groups have agreed on a roadmap for peace talks that are expected to begin in October and last about 2 months. South Sudan brought together members of the council and armed groups from several areas, but parties signed an initial agreement in front of the diplomats to set a 2-month period for talks starting on October 14th and running until the middle of December. Sudanese officials said the agreement aims at implementation of the peace confidence building measures included in the country's constitutional declaration. A suicide bomber targeted an Afghan special forces base in Kabul today, killing at least 4 commandos as violence continued to escalate following the collapse of peace talks between the United States and Taliban rebels. The bomber blew up an explosive laden minibus at the entrance to the camp, causing the reported deaths in addition to the 3 injuries. Taliban claimed responsibility for the attack. Up to 50 people were killed when a cargo train derailed in a southeastern province in the Democratic Republic of Congo this morning, though reports on casualties differed widely. The Minister for Humanitarian Affairs said that the derailment happened near a town of the province and gave a provincial death toll of about 50. However, the province's governor gave a lower estimate of 10 deaths and 30 injuries, adding that the 3 of train's carriages had come off the tracks. The family of Zimbabwean ex-President Robert Mugabe said on Thursday his body will be buried next week in his village, delivering an apparent snub to government plans to bury him at a national momentum. More details in the following report with Abir Hussein.
Zimbabwe's former president Robert Mugabe's family said he would be buried next week at a private ceremony at an as yet undisclosed location, rejecting plans by the rulers that overthrew him to inter him at a state monument. Mugabe, who ruled Zimbabwe for 37 years until he was ousted by his army in November 2017, died in a Singapore hospital 6 days ago, aged 95. His body arrived in Zimbabwe from Singapore on Wednesday and was due to lie in state on Thursday. President Emerson Mnangagwa and the ruling ZANU-PF party want Mugabe buried at a national monument to heroes of the liberation war against white minority rule after he is given a state funeral on Saturday and then burial on Sunday. The family, some members of which are still bitter over Mugabe's ouster, wants a private burial ceremony in the family homestead of Kutama in Zivimba, northwest of the capital. Mugabe fired Mnangagwa as first vice president in 2017, a move many perceived as an attempt to position his wife Grace to succeed him after nearly 4 decades of rule. Soon after, Mugabe was toppled by protesters and the army in what was seen as part of a power struggle within the ruling ZANU-PF party. Both Mnangagwa and Grace stood together as the former leader's remains were given an honor guard upon arrival at Harare airport. His body was later taken to his Blue Roof residence for mourning. Chinese President Xi Jinping, Cuban former leader Raul Castro, and a dozen of African presidents, including South Africa's Cyril Ramaphosa, are among those expected to attend Mugabe's state funeral on Saturday in Harare.
Moving on to the world of finance and economy, Egypt's annual inflation rate kept declining for the third month in a row for the first time in 6 years. A cabinet's media center infograph stated that the inflation rate reached 6.7 in August compared to 7.8% the previous month and 8.9% in June. The infograph showed a commentary by some international economic institutions hailing the decrease in Egypt's inflation. Bloomberg Economics said that Egypt could introduce the second largest fall in the interest rate across emerging markets, while Capital Digitals praised the shrinking rate of inflationary impact on energy subsidies, and the corporation asserted its optimism over Egypt's future monetary policy. The Egyptian pound's exchange rate against the dollar continued increasing in a number of national banks. The dollar's exchange rate ranged from 16.36 to 16.39 pounds for sale and from 16.46 to 16.49 for purchase. The US currency recorded a decline of more than 1.40 pounds since the beginning of 2019. Egypt's bourse took swings at the close of the weekend trading session amid foreign corporate purchases of blue chips against local and Arab investor purchases. The market capital for listed companies added 2.7 billion Egyptian pounds, closing at 1.755 billion Egyptian pounds. Benchmark EGX 30 index rose 0.64% above the 15.110 point mark, and the median capped EGX 70 index and the broader EGX 100 index both dipped 0.03%. China said today that the Chinese companies have started to inquire about prices for U.S. agriculture goods purchases in a further sign of a potential de-escalation and a bitter trade war between the two countries. Yesterday, the United States agreed to delay increasing tariffs on $250 billion worth of Chinese imports from October the 1st to October the 15th as a gesture of goodwill. The tariffs were set to increase to 30% from 25% on the goods. Speaking at a weekly news briefing in Beijing, Chinese Commerce Minister spokesman said that China welcomed the U.S. move, and he added that working levels teams from both countries will meet soon to prepare for the next round of top-level trade talks. In commodity markets, U.S.-Chinese easing trade tensions supported oil prices today as mutual concessions by the two world's largest economies improved global demand. London's Brent North Sea crude rose 14 cents at $55.85 per barrel, while U.S. West Texas Intermediate crude surged 7 cents at $60.88 a barrel. The oil market also rose over OPEC agreeing to trim output by asking overproducing members, Iraq and Nigeria, to bring production in line with their targets as the group strives to prevent a glut amid soaring U.S. production and the slowing global economy.